What's happening, guys? Crazy day out there today, especially on TCCO. I wanted to go over that one today. I put a lot of commentary in the room, and I wanted you guys to be able to kind of see what we do. So each morning, I'm going to kind of walk you through the day, right? So I get to the desk, and I start to look at all the pre-gainers, the pre-losers, and then what was on scan last night. So every morning, I'll come and check those out, and then start to do a little bit more of maybe fundamental research, or checking out which ones have the most volume, and bringing that list from 20 to 10 to 5 to my top 2 or 3 names. So we're going to start off by a snippet from the pre-market broadcast, which I do every single morning at 9 a.m. I grab the microphone, we go in the Traders Lounge, and I basically go through exactly what I'm looking to do on each individual name, if certain levels hit, or how I would trade it, or where I would risk, and things like that. So that's going to be the first part of this, and then we're going to get into a little bit of the tape. And as I tell everybody in the room, the best way to learn is seeing it over and over and over again. The shortcut is, there is no shortcut. It's screen time. You have to see it over and over and over again. You're going to see things today, and then you're going to see them act differently on different stocks in the future. So the key is to really just get a full idea of how these names react on certain situations, and then start to kind of make a plan based off of that. And I call it kind of taking notes, right? So when you see certain things happen, when you see action, you need to take notes. And that doesn't mean that it's exactly what you see, because as you know, sometimes there's traps. Sometimes there is a lot of volume that just kind of throws everybody off. And you could be thinking one thing, and that's exactly what they want you to think, and then they use that ramp as an exit, or they use that flush as a trap. So we're going to go over exactly that on this video, and you can see exactly how I kind of take the time in the Traders Lounge, so that you can kind of see exactly going through what I'm looking for and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm doing this while things are still moving along. So you'll hear my computer talking to me, but market's still open. But at any rate, I want you guys to focus on a few of the key levels that we've highlighted. We're going to speed up some of it. We're going to slow down some of it so that you can see exactly where there's some soaking. There's a stuff move into the VWAP level. But the most important thing is what happens after the stuff move. And for those of you guys that don't know what a stuff move is, that's a term that we coined, I don't know, maybe 9 years ago, 10 years ago. And basically, it's when volume comes into an offer, a bunch of volume hits, it doesn't budge, and it just goes through, and it's a wall, and then slams back down. And it's kind of an anticipation type trade. But you'll see that here. And like I said, it's what happens next. And what happens next was the beginning of the trap, where they started to accumulate blocks. So I go over that, and then you'll start to see the trades throughout the day, and then the short trade towards the end of the day. So I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have any questions, leave comments in the comment section below. And that's it. Enjoy. First and foremost, obviously the key, I think, is going to be patience, as always. TCCO, really nice opportunity already. I had it on watch early because it's only 1.4 million float. It had a really nice profit, and this reminds me a lot of Fran, F-R-A-N. Not this quarter, last quarter. If you guys remember, we also traded that. It had a huge day. It had big volume. It was very tiny float, and it went nuts. So definitely an opportunity here. Something that you should be cautious of. You don't need to chase it, obviously. There's been plenty of opportunities to scoop along the way. The reason why I went ahead and took some under the 4 level is because I was waiting for the dips. It kind of started to take off, and I was waiting for the dips, and it just kept on getting scooped up higher than I wanted to pay. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take chase size. And the ability to take chase size gave me, or by taking chase size, it gave me the ability to scale into a winner. So because I took chase size, I did take some off into the ramps. and then I re-added, and then I took some off into the ramps, and I traded around that core until it started to confirm my thesis that, hey, we're going. And I would 100% go back and look at Fran, kind of see how it traded. The good news is I'm sure the borrows are going to be a very, very tough thing to get right now, but I got them very early when I was still at my house, so that's good, just in case we have a short opportunity as well. But for now, I'm going to let this thing work. So far, I'm assuming 580s are going to want to maybe trap. The only fear that I have is, as always, with a good average, and when you size in, is damn newsletter coming in and crowding crap, and creating a retail heavy type of stock. So we'll see what happens. But again, really nice opportunities. Hopefully the comments helped. Like I said, Fran, this is like Fran 2.0, not this quarter, but from last quarter. And so we'll see what happens with that. All right, guys, so we're going to go through this TCC Oh squeezer today. The comments that I wrote in the room basically in a couple minutes, basically at 8:43 a.m. in the room, I was comparing it to the times where I'm short something and I'm trying to cover, right? And if you're cover and you keep on missing those covers, it's likely to go higher. So in this case, if I'm bidding for stuff and I keep on missing the entry, I know it's likely to go higher. And that's exactly what happened with TCCO. This morning, I was waiting for it to kind of come in. I was waiting for entries, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to miss this thing. So you have to take chase size. If it's a chase entry, I want to be chase size. So I need to be okay with it slamming right back to where it broke out. I already had done a lot of due diligence on this. I already knew what I was up against for the float. I already knew that they reported a good quarter, and it really reminded me, just like I talked about in the room, of Fran, which we nailed last quarter, if you guys recall. I did a video on that as well, on that big short squeeze. That one had about 45 or 50% short float. So at any rate, I joined basically versus the VWAP level like we talk about on Sunday scans. And because it was a chase entry, and because I nailed it so quickly, it went from basically those 390 entries to the 480s and 540s relatively quickly. That was a quick $1.20. So I'm locking in along the way. I'm paying myself along the way. And then I'm starting to accumulate the dips, and I'm just cautiously getting in there. And in my eyes, it's 580 is really the big key level at that point. Most important part about trading these types of things is you just can't go all or nothing. You have to have some type of game plan. You've got to lock in around the core, because if you are too patient, you might be right in the end. But in a case like this, where it pulls back after open, you might have had a huge score over the sevens, and then you're really second guessing yourself, and you end up bailing based on the action later on post open. So in a situation like this, I've identified that 580s is sort of that level that I want to at least risk based off of. I see a buyer in the sixes, I see a buyer 610s, sixes, 590s. So I want to give myself enough room where I'm not emotionally involved. And for me, that was the 580 level. It's not a hard stop at 580s, but it's that 580 level over and under. And it gives myself the ability to accumulate into the flushes, give myself a little bit of a buffer, and let the trade work for me. A couple people in the room asked me what I meant by soaking. So, we talk about this in Tandem Trader, textbook trading, and it's basically kind of, if you think about a sponge, and if you put a sponge underneath a faucet, it would kind of absorb it, right? And at some point, if there's too much water that comes, it's going to spill. But as long as it's absorbing and not enough water has come, it's going to, hold up. And that's the case here. At some point, bidders will break. But if there is not enough inventory that comes into the bids, then they're going to hold up, and that reverse trade is going to come. And what I mean by that is if, a lot of shorts come to the bids and they end up absorbing it all, well, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to go to the offers to cover. So, again, like I said, it's very important to lock, You never know if it's just going to be one and done. You never know if it's just all long bias. You don't know, what you're up against. So because I locked in, it gave me the ability to be a little bit more aggressive off of the open. So at this point, if you recall, a couple minutes ago, I've identified that 580s is that key level that I want to at least not be emotionally attached to. It can go and kiss that 580s, but as long as it starts to base there and it doesn't start to get heavy there, I'm going to go ahead and stick with that trade. Comes right into the 580s. You can see they kind of swipe it 590s. Kind of retest those 580s again. You can see 590s is a pretty decent sized seller at that point, but they end up swiping it and refresh the 6s, refresh the 601s, the 610s. Now that level that was a seller, the 590s, is now being supported. You can see each time it swipes right back through that 6. So once again, the one thing you can control is locking around your core. It takes the emotional side, the emotional component out of the trade. So I went ahead and locked some, and because of that, here I am. I'm able to buy into the flush. It's very important to understand that, this is not load up the dip, right? You still need to be proven that this trend is going to hold. And so what I start to kind of identify is that we have a buyer here. The buyer is starting to kind of absorb. The level that I wrote in the room was the 520s level. And that's when we're talking about the soaking. So I kind of identified that there was a soaker in the 520 to 540 range, and then it was basically 510, 520 range. And at about 20 past the hour, there is a big stuff into the VWAP, and then a huge limit order comes right after that. So we're going to watch out for that. The key is, and I call it taking notes, right? Because you could see all of this, but if it starts to stay heavy and it breaks down, then, it is what it is, right? Now you know that somebody's bagged at 540s, 520s who is, just accumulating. But some of the best traps happen in a situation like this where they, had a big move, then they flushed out, they go under VWAP. It convinces everybody that, what? It's broken down, it's under VWAP, we're going lower, there's a bunch of offers there, as you could see. And they end up just stuffing it right here. And if you go back and you relook at some of this action right here, you'll see a lot of the bids are getting absorbed. They're showing bids, they're getting absorbed. They're showing bids, they're getting absorbed. But they're not really in a rush to go. They don't want it to go yet. They want to reaccumulate more. So here's the 520, goes down to 515s, flushes out. So now everybody that was just using 520 as a backdrop just bailed. So now what we need to see is starts to absorb. It should fail at 5 and flush out. If it doesn't and they start to absorb, then we know that the buyer is still there. 520 is that key. What we want to see is 520 refresh, 520 refresh, 520 refresh. And the more times that it starts to find a new base at 520s, we know that that buyer is still there and there's a lot of people on the wrong side of the trade. If they end up absorbing 530s and then 540s, and at some point, the numbers just don't add up, right? There's 1.4 million shares. It's already traded almost 10 million shares. At some point, it's a battle. And so they're just trapping right now. They're in no rush, like I mentioned in the room. 520s, you can see, is now reabsorbing. And one of the big things that I mentioned here, and it's just like a newsletter. I compare it to a newsletter, right? When there's newsletters that alert these low float stocks to buy. Everybody buys them all at the same time. And then when if they want to accumulate a good portion of the float, when is the best time to buy? When that newsletter person says sell, 1,000 people all do the same thing, guess what? There's a ton of inventory on the offer. So if they want to accumulate at that time, that's the best time. And that's exactly what just happened here. When it ramped up into that VWAP, it stuffed. It gave confirmation to everybody that was short that, yes, you're on the right side. Hammer in. And it gave them the ability to just kind of use high limit orders, marketable limit orders, and just get as much as they can during that time. If it's obvious that this thing's going to hold support, if they don't let it crack like they did here, there is no trap. So again, this is a very dangerous trade for most traders without a padding. And obviously we rode it from 4 to 750. So, you know, and even the pullbacks from 580s up to the 7s again, it offered a really nice padding. So it gave me the ability to be a little bit more aggressive into these washouts, getting that confirmation, getting the information that I needed from this 520 level, absorb, flush out, reclaim, 530s base, 540s base. And, you know, even once again, they're not in a rush. And I mentioned that in the room. They're here, but they're not in a rush to squeeze this thing out yet. They're still working through. They're still trying to get a good portion of the float. Now, as I mentioned in the room at 1036, you know, it doesn't get any better than this. This is exactly what you want to see when you're watching this commentary. As I said in the room, you know, this is exactly what you want to see. You want to see the soaking. You want to see the certain levels. You want to see everything real time. That's how you learn, the screen time. You can see here 665 is the circuit level. You can see that right on the level 2. However, it has to stay there for 15 seconds. So if it doesn't, a lot of times you'll see it either slam down or it adjusts. And in this case, it went to 7, now 7:15 because, you know, every minute it adjusts. So once again, I always like to sell some just in case, and I want to be able to keep my my core intact without emotion so I can let this trade really pan out. What I want you guys to see here is the wicks. We talk about the wicks every Sunday scan. When it flushes out, it should have died, they buy it back up. Flushes out, should have died, they buy it back up. Flushes out, same thing over and over, right? So all these times it should have died, but for some reason it's not, right? It's because they're supporting it. They're not on the offer. There's a lack of inventory. The only offers out there are probably shorts and anybody else that was just trading it, but that's a minimal percentage compared to, you know, the float that they've likely absorbed. So that just flushed out the rest of the folks that were buying for the breakout. And now if it does not break down, it's only got one way to go. So here the key level is about 690, 680, 690s or so, because that's the prior top that you can see. So 789 is the circuit level here. So we're going to go into a circuit halt. This is a 5-minute halt, but we're speeding it up. You can see that the indication is around 8 on 40,000 shares so far. I like to sell some just in case, because you never know, it might open, everybody bails out, and then, you know, they walk. So it's always smart to go ahead and lock some in. So at this point, I have about 1/2 left. So usually whenever it starts to peak out at certain levels, I start to kind of look left, right? So, you know, try to keep emotions out. So you should assume that 860, 880 level is probably going to peak out. Can always go back up, but if I were going to re-add anything, I'd want to see it rip through that level and then start to base a few times before I make any decisions. So I went ahead and sold some into that rip, just kind of anticipating that it was going to potentially pull back because it seemed like a stuff to me. You can see the volume associated with that. So at this point, I have about 1/4 of my position left. Now I have zero emotional attachment to it. Really, the key to see is these flush outs and then the quick reclaims. Kind of shows the hand that there are, still a lot of emotions involved in this. So at this point, 860s, 880s is the really big level if we're going to have any extended move. I would encourage you to go back through the chat logs as well at about 11:41. I mentioned that there's a 7:10, 7:30 soaker, so you can go back and watch, see that action around that time, around 11:40, 11:41. So here we are, we're testing that 860 to 880 level here. Now everybody that didn't cover before is fully emotionally attached. And I am exiting the position. And I am fully done with the trade now. So watch right here. I'm watching for a stuff move. Put on the short and immediately flushes out. You can see it kind of went back. If you're looking left, it went right back into that prior resistance. There's been a slow seller since about 12:45 or so, straight down into about 1:45, almost into the 2 p.m. level. So as it ramped back up, it ran into that resistance from that slow seller for the past hour, hour and a half. And that gave me the opportunity to go ahead and get short. And that was the trade. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I had one more ad on the short side and then cover, and then that was it. I'll post my entire chart on the blog, so make sure that you guys also check out the blog and chat logs associated with this. The chat logs are really the key to this. It's not just the video. I want you guys to kind of go back, review the commentary, go back and review the tape. Watch it over and over again. Watch how it reacts at certain levels, and that is how you learn tape. It's going to take a while. It takes screen time, screen time, screen time, screen time over and over again. So again, hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment, thumbs up, and until the next video, we'll see you later.